Hi everyone, I'm Elin, I'm 25 years old and I'm from North Wales. I'm currently working as a social media and communications officer in the third sector. I run my own blog and I also dabble in a bit of freelance writing and speaking. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about my experiences of growing up as a vision impaired person and to also share some advice that I wish I'd heard when I was younger. I have a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which I was diagnosed with when I was 6 years old. That was 3 years after my initial symptoms were noted. RP is a degenerative condition, so I have and still continue to lose my eyesight over time. Now, coming to terms with that diagnosis was quite a roller coaster. I've experienced a lot of emotions and feelings as a result of it, from anxiety to grief to loneliness and isolation. It was quite confusing at first because I didn't realise that everyone else around me didn't see the world through blurry lenses like I did. But of course, there came a time when I became very aware of my impairment, not only through crashing into a lot of things, but also through a QTBI starting to come into school to teach me to do things like Braille and touch typing. I actually didn't mind making these adjustments in my life. I really enjoyed learning Braille because it was something different that no one else around me could do, and it also meant that I could read in the dark, which was pretty cool. And touch typing has proven to be one of the most valuable skills I've learned, and it becomes very handy, especially for the writer in me. But there were some adjustments that I wasn't so welcoming of. The white cane was definitely one of them. I've always had a love-hate relationship with the cane. I was introduced to it when I was 8 years old, and I was not a fan. And it actually took 8 years of convincing before I picked it up again when I was 16 years old. But I am really glad that I eventually got to that point because the cane has proven to be my key to independence, and it has come with me on independent train journeys and different trips I've taken across the UK. But I've skipped ahead a little bit now, so we'll backtrack a little to talk about school. Just like my cane, I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with school. I really enjoyed learning, I was a bit of a geek, but the environment itself was somewhere I found it quite tricky to be. I attended mainstream school all throughout my time in education, and I was the only vision impaired person in school during that time, which did mean that some people did see me as being different. Although I hope you can't, maybe some of you can relate to that feeling of not being able to fit in. Vision impairment is something that most people will not understand, but it's also important to remember that there are people out there who will see you for you and not your impairment. Some of my closest friends today are ones that I made in school, but there were others that became quite baffled by my impairment, especially when I'd gone from being able to spot them in the canteen to not being able to do that anymore because my eyesight had deteriorated. And that's the thing when you are living with a degenerative condition. It can be really tricky to communicate that loss to the people around you. I had a really supportive QTVI and TA when I was at school. They always had my back and made sure that I had the right adjustments to be on a level playing field with other people around me. I had to tell them about any kind of deterioration, otherwise work would not be produced in the right format. But communicating that loss to other people around me was really tricky, especially when it came to explaining that something that might have helped me a year, a month, even a week ago was not so helpful anymore. So one of my main pieces of advice for fellow young vision impaired people is to take time to figure everything out. If you're experiencing loss, take time to process that grief. And also take time to learn what works for you in terms of the tech and the support you need. It's so important to advocate for yourself, and it's one of the most valuable skills you'll ever have as a vision impaired person. Like I said before, school was not a place that I felt like I really fit in. So I knuckled down, I got my grades, I put far too much pressure on myself to get those A's and B's. But outside of school, I made sure that I did things that I enjoyed to make sure that I felt like I had a place outside of that setting. So I took on piano and harp lessons, learning most of it by ear. I'd play football in the field with my brother. We'd go watch Everton lose as a family. And I realised that there was an alternative to doing most things. My friends and I would hop on our bikes during the summer, all of us wearing fluorescent jackets to lessen any risk of any crashes. And by crashes, I don't mean the risk of cars crashing into us, but rather me crashing into the people that I was with. There were definitely a few bumps along the way, and a few cars in our village bared a few scratches as a result of me passing by, but they were hardly noticeable, and it was all a part of the fun. Letting me have those experiences was actually one of the best things that my parents ever did for me. They never wrapped me up in cotton wool. They never said, no, you can't do that because you're vision impaired, but instead said, you find a way, find an alternative, and you go ahead and you do it. And that was so empowering and so freeing for me. And it's actually what motivated me to go ahead and do everything I've gone on to do and achieve after school. I stepped into the world of work after leaving sixth form. I got myself a job as a trainee community development assistant working at the North Wales Society for the Blind. And after that contract ended, I decided to take on a degree with the Open University, which I've just graduated from. During that degree, I decided to look for other work, which was a challenge. I applied for a lot of jobs before I eventually got offered a position working as a social media and communications officer in the third sector, the job I'm still working now 3 years on. When I was going through all those challenges I was experiencing at school, I wasn't talking about them with many people, but I was writing about them. That was a form of therapy for me, honestly. It was how I worked through my feelings and made sense of them all. But when I was 16, I reached a point of thinking that maybe some of the things I was writing about could potentially help others who are in a similar situation. So I decided to create my very own blog. And I went from not talking about my thoughts and feelings with many of the people around me to deciding to put it on the internet for anyone in the world potentially to read. But deciding to create My Blurred World back in 2015 was honestly one of the best decisions I've ever made. It led me to a community of people that I never knew existed before. It helped me to grow in confidence and build my self-advocacy skills. And it also led to some pretty cool opportunities, such as writing for the BBC and The Guardian, doing a lot of TV and radio interviews, speaking to government and schools, and winning 1 or 2 awards along the way too. I write about all sorts on my blog. It all started with accounts of my time in school, mixed in with a few makeup and beauty reviews, and it has since evolved into a platform where I delve a little bit deeper into the feelings I've experienced all throughout my life as a vision impaired person. But there's also some light-hearted things in the mix too, so I love to write about things like fashion and also the concerts I go to. I was reading through an old blog post of mine a few months ago. It was titled "You Don't Need Sight to Have Vision." And although the writing was a bit on the cringy side, the title itself is a motto I've kept close for a while now. There are a lot of misconceptions out there about what people think we can and cannot do as vision impaired people. But with the right accommodations in place, there is nothing to stop you. I learned about the social model of disability a few years ago. It's a theory that essentially says that we are not disabled by our impairments, but rather the world around us. It's societal, attitudinal, and environmental barriers that disable us. That was honestly such a light bulb moment for me because it helped me to realise that I am not the problem. The real problem is a world that tells us that we don't belong. There are a lot of positives to being vision impaired. It's taught me so much, and although there have been a lot of challenges along the way, I wouldn't change a thing. But I know it can be tricky to find those positives sometimes, so if you are finding things difficult, please reach out. Don't be an Elin and bottle everything up. Just feel everything and talk to the people you trust. And also, if you can, connect with others who are in a similar situation. Those people will be able to relate to you on such a unique level. They'll be able to talk to you and give you advice during the challenges, and also laugh with you when mishaps happen. When you walk into glass doors, fall up and down stairs, and end up talking to a wall because you don't know that the person you were speaking to has left the room. But those people will also be an important reminder that you are not alone. So those are just some of the experiences I've had as a vision impaired person up to this point. There are so many other things that I want to do and achieve in my life. I'm only just getting started, honestly. There will be challenges along the way, but now that I have all these different outlets and ways of finding freedom, I know that I'll be able to deal with them. I'll keep my goals on the down low for now, but what I will say is what I hope to do every single day is to prove to my younger self, the girl who was too afraid to speak out, who was worried about barriers and misconceptions, I make sure that she knows that anything is possible and you really don't need sight to have vision.